Welcome to the Budget Mom YouTube channel. I'm Kamiko Love from thebudgetmom.com, and today we are doing another real life budget. Now today I'm going to be sharing community member Mariah's story. Obviously her budget numbers. She is 26 years old, never married, no children, and she works as a chemist in the pharmaceutical field. Now Mariah makes okay income for her age. But what's happening in her case is crippling student loan debt, and more importantly, private student loans. So at the end of this video, we're going to be going into a pretty detailed conversation about the possibility of refinancing private student loans and what that would look like in Mariah's case. So her name is Mariah. She's 26 years old and she makes at least $3,260 a month. Now she says this can fluctuate as high as $3,640 as a chemist in pharmaceutical manufacturing. She's single. She says she has a lot of debt, mostly private student loans. When the pandemic hit and I lost my job with no emergency fund, I said enough. I recently came across your most recent real life budget video and it honestly helped me so much. I switched careers, doubled my income, and I'm ready to take ownership of my bad habits and change things around for a brighter, more stable future. I have the potential to move up in my field I'm in, although I'm also considering going back to school and getting into a career that can make me double my income now. I have a lot to consider. So it's a little bit of her backstory. Now, today I'm going to be showing you what Mariah's information looks like using the budget by paycheck method. Now the budget by paycheck method, we already determined her why and her purpose. This is her motivation and the thing that's going to help her understand why it's so important to stay disciplined on her journey. Next is to track and categorize your spending. Now I am assuming that all community members that send me their information have done this step to send me what they have. The next is to identify regular bills. Now, before we jump into regular bills, I always like to look at a community member's income. Now, she had mentioned that the least amount she can expect to receive, this is the minimum amount for her that she's going to receive, is $3,260. So she gets $1,630 per paycheck on a bi-weekly pay schedule, which is June 4th, 18th, July 2nd, and so on. Now, as mentioned, her pay can fluctuate between $1,630 and $1,820 a paycheck. But when you're budgeting using fluctuating income like this, it's always best to budget the worst case scenario or the least amount you expect to receive for your income when you are doing your budgeting. The next thing I want to look at is her debt and her savings goals. So with her debt, she has 4 current debts. So right now, Bank of America, 1807 is the balance at about 20% interest. I like to pay off debt using the avalanche method, which is paying off the debt with the highest interest rate first. I'm all about getting that most expensive debt out of your life first because it's going to save you the most on interest in the long run. So I put that as number 1 priority, getting rid of that 20% interest debt. Now the reason I have question marks between 2 and 3 is because my recommendation at the end of this video about refinancing her private student loans. Now, her car max is only $7,500 at 9.7% interest. Her school loan is over $111,000 for 12%. Now, even with a private student loan, this interest rate looks high to me. If we can refinance the private student loans at, say, a 7% interest rate, then I would knock off the car max next, the school loan third. This 4th debt she has is a school loan that she just realized went to collections. So she just found out about this. It's 2405. Since she just found out prior to me doing this video, she has yet to call and get on a payment plan to pay off this school loan that is in collections. But I have it listed here as number 4. The most important thing is for you to let that collection agency know you are aware of that debt and you can set up a pretty affordable payment plan to start paying on that collection debt. So that's the order in which I would pay off the debt and what she has. The next is her savings goals. Now, she has $1,500 in an emergency fund that's already saved. Right now, that makes her feel comfortable. If it were me, I would recommend to increase this to at least 3 months of necessary living expenses. But she already hit that $1,500 goal. She has 2 ongoing sinking funds that she is doing, self-care, and she does want a tattoo. The reason we are not putting anything in the monthly amount saved for this is because these are ongoing. These are things that are not immediate, that do not need to be saved. It's only when she comes up with extra income and she has no other financial priorities. There are 2 savings goals that she really has that she wants to fund. A trip to see her family that's going to happen very soon. She has about 3 months to save up for this goal. She has $340 saved. She wants $1,200, which means over the next 3 months, she has to save a total of $287 every month to reach that goal. She also has a $300 Christmas fund that she wants to hit that she has nothing saved for. So I look at these and I make sure I'm aware of these goals while I'm working on her budget, because remember, your financial goals and the way that you prioritize them in your life and the importance is going to tell you where to throw your money when you are creating your budget. Your budget is there not to tell you not to spend money. It's telling you where to spend the money on the things that matter most to you, the things that are most important, and to spend less on the things that are not. So that's why the goals are so important. Now, when we look at her regular bills, this is all she has for bills. Now, Mariah has done very well at cutting down all of the unnecessary spending in her life. The biggest bill she has is obviously her student loan. It's about $1,300 on the 24th. She has $600 in rent that she also pays. Now, Mariah lives with roommates. That's why the rent is so low. She has some roommates. She has internet, Spotify, her car payment, the credit card, the car insurance, student loans, and utilities. And don't forget, once we call and make payment arrangements on that loan and collections, we'll have another expense here in her bills for that. So this is where all of her bills equal $2,485. Now, if we go back to her pay and we do the red or green test, this is what I call the red or green test, she makes $3,260 a month at the very least. Okay, this is minimum. And just her fixed expenses is $2,485. That tells me we're in the green. Okay, green or red test, we're in the green. It means I have some money to work with for variable expenses and financial goals outside of just her bills. And that's the number, and what we call this the gap. You want to widen that gap between your income and your expenses. The bigger your gap, the more money you have to put towards financial goals. So, that being said, let's take a look at her variable spending. Okay, that's part of step number 4, your cash envelopes and identifying your variable expenses. So her variable spending is quite simple. It's $300 a month on groceries, $100 a month on gas, $200 on therapy, $54 on her cat, and $100 every month on takeout. Now, when I initially looked at these variable expenses, I'm always looking at, okay, what would I cut? If we needed to really make more progress on our goals, what could we cut? All of these are essential, except for takeout. And that's the one I would gravitate towards, and that's the one that you're gonna see that I decreased when I did her budget by paycheck method, using the budget by paycheck steps. So the next step is to complete our budget calendar. Here's how Mariah's calendar will look. Now, her first payday is on the 4th and then the 18th. We're going to assume that the rent internet was paid with the last month's last paycheck. Everything in green, we're gonna pay with the 4th, and because her student loan debt payment is so high, we can't use just one of these paychecks to cover it. We have to split it. So these 2 color dots is what correlates to each of the color of the paycheck. So for the paycheck on the 4th, we're gonna set aside $700 for this expense, and then we're gonna take care of the remainder of it with this last paycheck on the 18th, as well as these other bills that we have listed. The budget calendar is not just for your bills, even though that's what you're seeing. It's to inject real life into your budget. Holidays, events, occasions, appointments, anything you are spending money on that needs to be included in your budget goes on your budget calendar. Now, the next step is we looked at the savings goals. We created a plan of attack for the debt. We need to create a realistic budget. Now, this is the paycheck budget tracker. And what we are doing is using the budget by paycheck method, you're going to create a budget every single time you get paid. So with her paycheck on the 4th, we're gonna cover Spotify, her car loan payment, utilities, and don't forget, we're gonna take care of some of that student loan so we have enough money to cover that. Her total bills equal $1,080. If you subtract that from her income, she's left with $550. But we still have to take care of those variable expenses. So with this first paycheck, we decided to give her all of her grocery budget, half of her gas, half of her therapy, the total amount for her cat, and then we did $45 for takeout, which is just $5 short of half. Now, the remainder, we're off by $1. I'm just gonna say throw it at your family trip savings. That's gonna give us a zero-based budget. All of our expenses minus our income equals 0. But when we go to the last paycheck of the month, which is on the 18th, we're gonna cover her credit card payment, car insurance, the student loan. Remember, we still have to cover some of the student loan for $592, but we're also covering the rent and internet into July. If we add up all of our bills, it equals $1,405, leaving us $225 left over. We're gonna take care of the remainder of her variable expenses, and she has $25 left to put towards that family trip. Now you can see in 1 month's time, if we take both of these budget trackers, she's not doing the full amount that she needs for this family trip. Remember, we said that she needed to reach that goal, her family trip needed to be at saving $287 a month. And that's not even covering her Christmas goal that she wanted to reach. So let's talk about my recommendations. Okay, so when it comes to Mariah's information, pay is okay. You know, she did mention in her personal story that she had a thought about going back to school to possibly double her income. My only concern with going back to school is adding more debt to the crippling student loan debt that we already have. So I would be cautious in making that decision. You know, that was a big thing with me. I always had a dream of going back to school to get my doctorate. I always said, if I'm gonna do school, I'm gonna do it all the way. But here's the realization I had later in my life, especially after dealing with student loans, is the debt that you're taking on to go back to school worth the value that you get from that school after the fact? So are you gonna get paid more? Is it gonna bring more value into your life? And if it's not worth the debt that you're taking on to get it, then I would not go back to school. That's just how I feel about it. And for me to address a little bit of that thought that she had. So let's talk about refinancing the private student loans. Now, this is absolutely the biggest pain point for Mariah. Now, without knowing the term or how long Mariah has to pay off her private student loans that she has, I would recommend looking at refinancing her private student loans, especially with an interest rate of 12% on such a high balance like $111,000. Now, if you can qualify for a better interest rate, refinancing private student loans should be an option that you want to consider. Now, most lenders will not typically charge you an upfront cost to refinance your private student loans. So the lower the rate that Mariah can get, it will hopefully allow her to pay less each month, save on interest, or possibly both. Now, one of the reasons it might be good to refinance Mariah's private student loans is to save money. And when you lower the interest rate, you decrease your monthly payments, the amount that you repay, or both. So for example, if Mariah can refinance her student loans to a fixed 7% interest rate, and we assume she has like a 10-year loan term left to pay on them, she could save about $300 a month on her monthly payment and over $36,000 on interest by assuming she stays with the same term of 10 years. When you refinance, you can also change your repayment terms. You can do a simplify repayment, when this basically just allows you to take, if you have multiple student loans, and end up with just one student loan. You combine them into one. So you only have one payment to make. Some call this student loan consolidation. You can also stretch out the term of your loan. And this is helpful because it gives you a lower monthly payment to make to free up money to pay other essential expenses. Just remember, the downside is if you stretch out a term, when you increase that term or the amount of time you are paying off something, you will pay more overall because of the interest. You can also actually shorten the term when you refinance to save money on interest. That's another way you can go. And this will increase your monthly payments, but will decrease the amount that you pay towards interest. So you increase your payments, but you pay less in interest over the term period. Refinancing also gives you the chance to work with a different lender. Now, this is best if you are completely unhappy with your current lender, or if a new lender can offer you more benefits. One of the big benefits is like releasing a cosigner sooner or earlier, or taking advantage of a different repayment plan if they offer that. With all of this being said, with refinancing your private student loans, there is one, I think, crucial thing that I want to mention. For Mariah to do this in the best way, she has to have good credit. Usually around the mid 700s. Mariah has okay income, but what I am really concerned about for her is her debt to income ratio, or her DTI. Your DTI must be solid, and it is the amount of money you owe relative to your income. The DTI required to refinance private student loans varies among lenders. Many look for about a DTI of at least around 50%, but you really want to aim to have your DTI lower than 20%. Now, when just looking at Mariah's information here, her DTI is high, and that which might make it hard for her to get approved for refinancing. She might have to take some time to lower her balances, her debt balances, before she can make the decision to refinance her private student loans. She can always still try to get approved, but might need a cosigner to get approved for refinancing her private student loans. If Mariah is rejected, I recommend talking with the lender to ask why she was rejected, and then taking the steps necessary to meet their requirements in order to get approved. So those are kind of some of the pros and cons. Remember, when you refinance your private student loans, the number one thing is you want to get that interest rate lowered. So you want to make sure you have a good credit score. Okay, mid 700s. I've seen people approved in the mid 600s. And also that decreasing your interest rate does not guarantee you're saving money, especially if you stretch out your loan term. So if Mariah goes from only having, say, 5 years left to pay, she refinances and gets 15 years to pay, sure, it decreases her payment to help her right now with expenses, but she's gonna pay a whole lot more over the long haul because of the interest rate. So just my recommendation is to at least look into it. Check out your credit score, see if you can get qualified to refinance your private student loans and free up some extra money in your monthly payment and save money on interest while you're doing that. If you found this video helpful, please like it and don't forget to subscribe. Over now.